Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Hello.
It's Season 5, Episode 31. Got a quick turnaround here. On Tuesday night, we're talking Steelers and Ravens, Thanksgiving Day game. And obviously there's still a lot up in the air right now because, as Austin, you pointed out to me earlier in the week, after we learned about the Ravens players testing positive for COVID-19, the fact that contact tracing had been done and high-risk contacts had been identified and isolated, that did not necessarily mean that players and coaching staff members that were not close contacts could not have gotten the virus, and that unfortunately came to pass.
Yeah, we saw the Ravens had 5 more positives, 4 coaches and 1 player at the least, and the extra player is now Pernell McPhee. The coaches have remained unnamed. It's still a big loss because the Ravens are going to have to go into the game without the 4 coaches. Just like in the Bengals game that the Steelers played, the coaches for the Bengals that tested positive couldn't be with the team. So this is a big loss. So now you're talking about missing 4 players. Now you're missing 4 coaches. And then it's not even done. Next, you now have to do more high-risk contact tracing because now Pernell McPhee was a surprise. And now tomorrow we might get another guy that's high risk. It might not be over, is what I'm trying to say. The Ravens might not be done. You're talking about postponing this game, possibly. I can't see it. This is a Thursday night Thanksgiving game. I think that the NFL is going to do everything that they can. And I know it's a little bit different because a lot of it was high-risk contacts, but the Raiders game, they had 9 positives last week, or 9 that had to go on the COVID-19 list. And they didn't postpone that game. Granted, the one caveat is that they didn't have as many positive cases. They just had a lot of high-risk contacts. And they were able to get a lot of those guys back onto the field. But, it's not going well for the Ravens.
We saw something similar with the 49ers and Packers a couple weeks ago on Thursday, too.
Yeah, we did. It happens. You just have to play through it.
So the Ravens are without those players. They could be without more. They could be without Calais Campbell again in this game. So you're talking about a Ravens team that's desperate, on a losing streak, and they are now coming into this game with short rest, having played a long overtime game, and on the road for a Thursday night. And now they're going to be possibly without all these players, without practice too. So already things are stacking up to be quite advantageous for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Where has your mind on this game shifted comparatively to where it was before all this happened?
So honestly, when I saw the COVID positives originally, right? It's always like, you know that they got COVID positives. You don't know the players yet. Then I saw that it was the running backs. I was not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed because it feels like everyone was so excited about that. But all I remember is Gus Edwards running all over the Steelers. 12 of his 16 runs against the Steelers in the first matchup were successful. It's not like Gus Edwards is a slouch. I understand J.K. Dobbins is kind of taken over for that backfield. He's been the guy, especially if you watch the last game against the Titans. He had most of the snaps. I think he doubled what Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards put together. So, losing J.K. Dobbins is a big deal, and Mark Ingram is he's Mark Ingram, but Gus Edwards can still run. I've been a fan of Gus Edwards for a while. I actually like his running style. He's a hard-nosed runner. That didn't really do it for me. Losing Pernell McPhee was probably my biggest one because, again, if Brandon Williams could have played, that's a big loss, but I didn't think he was going to play because of his injury. Losing Pernell McPhee, I think, out of the 4 is one of their biggest losses, and if they lose anyone else, it's going to be awful. But, this is a much different matchup, this one, going in because of those. And now you're looking at a team that you don't have to verse Calais Campbell this time. They're not going to have a Ronnie Stanley from the beginning this time. Immediately out, obviously, because he got injured in the Steelers game. It's a much different team. And now we have Mike Hilton and we have Tyson Alualu. So their run game is damaged because they're down 2 running backs. And now we got our best two run defenders in this game, which I alluded to at the end of last podcast. It's a lot different coming into this game than the last one. And the Steelers are in a much better spot than the Ravens right now.
Yeah, so Gus Edwards last year and so far this year, the two games where he had the most carries in a game and the most rushing yards in a game were both this game, the most recent Steelers-Ravens game that we saw earlier this year, and the season finale last year. Edwards went crazy too. So he's definitely no slouch. And I believe we're going to see Justice Hill again for the Ravens. This is a guy that hasn't really seen the field. In fact, I don't think he has a single rushing attempt this year. This guy was used kind of sparingly last year. It was a running back from Oklahoma State that the Steelers actually had a little interest in last season. In limited action last year, he had 2 touchdowns. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on Hill, because he's probably going to see some playing time too.
Yeah, I thought Justice Hill was good last year for the few snaps he got. He just got phased out. I mean, when you draft J.K. Dobbins so high, it just and then you already have Gus Edwards, who was number 2 before then, and Mark Ingram, who you paid for. It was Justice Hill got thrust to the bottom of the roster. It is what it is, but he'll have his chance to shine in this game to prove that he can play with the big boys. So I figure that he's going to have an expanded role next year. I can't imagine the Ravens are going to keep Mark Ingram after this year. There's no reason to pay Mark Ingram when you have 3 serviceable running backs other than him.
Yeah, Hill was going to be probably more likely the receiving threat that we see for the Ravens in this one. So let's dive into the game and a little bit about the series. Obviously, Steelers-Ravens is a storied rivalry going back to the mid-1990s when the old Cleveland Browns were moved to Baltimore. And the Steelers have enjoyed a slight edge in terms of overall wins, and they came away with the win earlier in the year. So the Steelers are looking for a season sweep for the first time since 2017. And a fun fact, this is going to be the second time these two teams have met on Thanksgiving Day. Their first meeting was 7 years ago, a 22-20 win in Baltimore for the Ravens. You might remember that game because that is the one where Mike Tomlin interfered with play when he was on the field during a kickoff by Jacoby Jones that possibly could have taken a touchdown off the board for Baltimore. That was certainly a very wild day, and it overshadowed what was a really close game.
Yeah, I went back and watched that game because obviously you linked it to me. It just felt so weird. There's so much I didn't really remember. Like, I didn't remember Le'Veon Bell getting knocked out on what would have been a touchdown, and they called it a not touchdown because his helmet flew off. I didn't remember Emmanuel Sanders and Le'Veon Bell ever playing together. It felt so weird to see Emmanuel Sanders catching passes while Le'Veon Bell was there. It only lasted a year. It just didn't feel right, though. It felt like the Emmanuel Sanders and the Le'Veon Bell series happened at 2 separate times completely. So the game was interesting to go back and look at.
So when looking at these two teams and how they stack up, just from a pure statistical standpoint, when you're looking at the Baltimore Ravens, we've talked a bit about them. Certainly when we haven't been on the podcast, we've been talking a lot about the way the Ravens offense has just not been quite the same unit it was a year ago. Now they're still the top rushing team in the NFL. The Steelers should remember very well that the Ravens ran for 265 yards in their matchup earlier this year. But the big difference this year is that the Ravens are not producing in the passing game. They're still putting up a decent amount of points, but their offense, which was a record-setting unit last year and had basically no issues at all on the way to the playoffs, has come back to earth a little bit, certainly in terms of the passing game, and the rushing game is not setting records this year. So I don't know where you look at this Ravens offense right now. They do some things well, but they've been mangled by injuries, and there's some things that they're really struggling with right now.
The way I view it is like the Ravens just need to be getting back to where their rushing is efficient. That's what they were so good at last year. And what I predicted coming into this year was that it wasn't going to be as effective. They're going to be forced to throw, and they weren't going to be as good. And this is exactly what we're seeing. In terms of passing yards per game, they're only better than the New York Jets, and that's really, really bad. Like, for a quarterback that just won MVP, and I understand my feelings about it, but I already thought Lamar Jackson wasn't a very good passer, but that's really bad. To not be able to just barely being able to outthrow the New York Jets, I should say. And a lot of people point out the weapons, and I question, what do you mean? Like, he has Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews. Like, that I've seen quarterbacks do more with less. it's like people say he has no weapons. Like, yeah, he has a pretty solid receiver, which you could say Marquise Brown isn't solid. I think it's more of Lamar Jackson's fault that he's not having that good of a year. So you could at least take that one away if you want to be fair. But he's still got Mark Andrews, man. I've seen quarterbacks do with less. That's just all I'm going to say on that. And the run, I say it doesn't work. They're still the number one ranked rush offense in terms of rush yards per game. They're averaging 160 rush yards per game, but it's not historic anymore. It's not, we're going to break a bunch of records with a rushing attack in a modern era, which is ridiculous with how the passing game is used in this era, but they're not like that anymore. They come back down to earth a little bit, and I think the biggest thing is that Lamar Jackson's running has been restricted. Lamar Jackson is putting up nowhere near his rushing numbers that he did last year, and he's being forced to pass, like I said. And him being forced to pass is leading to a lot more turnovers. This is why they have 7 interceptions on the year already. Like, they had less than that on the entire year last year. They had 12 total turnovers as well. So add on 5 fumbles, and it's allowing teams to stay in the game with their offense because they're just not very good. Imagine having like one of the worst passing offenses where you hardly throw and you still are able to throw 7 interceptions. I'd say 7 interceptions like a lot this late in the year. Usually Ben's already in at 7, but it's just with how low their quantity is of throwing. Like, that's really bad. Like, they're not throwing a lot, and they're still their turnover to pass ratio is just really bad. I really just can't speak about how bad and low I think of this offense at all. They're really, really struggling. I don't know. A lot of people put blame on Greg Roman. A lot of people put blame on Lamar Jackson. A lot of people put on blame on Lamar Jackson's weapons, which I think you could share the blame everywhere. But I think a lot is mostly on Lamar Jackson and Greg Roman. Greg Roman's not figuring out what to do now that his rushing attack is being thwarted, and it's not as good as last year. And Lamar Jackson just can't throw. I will say it forever, and it makes me so happy that after last year getting berated like that he's an MVP and still saying, yeah, he's one of the worst MVPs ever because he can't throw and he relied completely on his legs, and then the next this is not going to last. That I can finally say that this is where we're at this year. We're at the point where I said, yeah, this is why this guy is going to last this league forever because his running's not going to last forever. Sorry, we're having like a whole massive rant about how their offense is terrible.
Now, I will say, to kind of rebuttal you there, with the game on the line against the Titans, he did come up with a game-tying drive where he completed 4 of 6 passes for, I think, something like 50 yards to get the Ravens down towards the Titans' end of the field and kick a game-tying field goal to send it into overtime. Now, I know you could say that he could have won the game either, but, so could have Aaron Rodgers against the Colts earlier this week. I thought it was important for the Ravens to be able to, or for Jackson to be able to show that he could do that, even if the Titans' defense is not all that impressive.
Yeah, no, it's not. I speak so badly about him. You would think I rank him at like 32. I really don't. I just don't rank him like top 5, top 10 like everyone else does. I think he's a very average quarterback at the end of the day. I think because of his rushing ability, he actually is really solid. I think that he can complete some passes. It's just like I just don't view him. I never viewed him as the top 5 quarterback, the MVP that everyone else did. So
let's be clear, when we're talking about quarterbacks, there's a lot of different ways to throw. There's the straight drop back in rhythm throwing. There's quick West Coast type throws, or there's quick drop, or there's longer, more elongated drop backs where you need to drop back with the game on the line to throw it and win it. There's play action boots. There's just play action to help ease things for you. And there's there are ways to scheme things open, and there's ways to make plays kind of outside of structure. And I think that, let me ask you, when it comes to players like Kirk Cousins versus Lamar Jackson, obviously the athleticism between the two is not even comparable, but in terms of just overall arm talent or just arm ability or pure ability as a drop back passer, do you think it's outrageous to think that they're both pretty similar in terms of just how well they perform as straight drop back passers?
I don't think so, because obviously you picked 2 quarterbacks I didn't really like, that I both don't like because I thought they were overrated. But I think that, yeah, they perform at about the same level. Honestly, I might even Lamar Jackson's better in that regard, which is kind of crazy to say. Kirk Cousins is pretty bad. Cousins isn't very good. So
But
I think Lamar Jackson is definitely on par. It might even be better throwing.
But my point is that there you still can win games. You can win playoff games, as we saw with Kirk Cousins last year, with a quarterback that you might not be able to drop back and throw the ball a ton when you're losing. I know that Jackson had that big game-tying drive, but largely that's been seen as his issue. And we've seen with Kirk Cousins that it's pretty similar. He's not very good when he's asked to be a drop back, throw the ball across the yard type of quarterback. But when you use a lot of play action, when you use the running game to support him, he can win some games. So my point still is and I know that you don't dispute this. I know that your kind of gripe with him comes more just as the drop back type of passer. But when you use all of those extra schemes and things that can aid a quarterback, and you combine that with his athleticism, it still makes him a dangerous player. But at the same time, you are still skeptical of his ability to win as a drop back passer.
Yeah, I think his abilities really restrict defense on what they could do. I feel like it's really hard to play man coverage against Lamar Jackson. And again, this is not because of his passing ability, so to say. It's that getting backs turned to Lamar Jackson is dangerous. Lamar Jackson can easily take advantage of the run. And unless I'm confusing it, I'm pretty sure the Steelers did end up playing a lot of zone against the Ravens, and it ended up getting picked apart a lot. The most because they were scared to play man, unless I'm confusing the game. But yeah, Lamar Jackson has abilities that are still, that still make like an above average quarterback or an average quarterback that he can be dangerous.
So I've noticed that there's a couple things that teams are doing. There's that heavy zone scheme that you've seen defenses run against him, and there's also this situation where you're not just spying one player on Lamar Jackson. Now you're seeing two players, which I think is kind of interesting. And then he doesn't really know how to react to that. I think I saw the Titans do that a couple of times. But overall with this offense, let's kind of transition to the Steelers' defense. And it should be a unit that's going to be, at full strength. There's no real issues as far as I can tell. Just trying to look over the injury report real quick. There's nothing I'm seeing here that would lead me to believe that the Steelers' defense is going to be at anything other than full strength on Thursday. They struggled mightily to defend the run in their last two games against the Ravens, dating back to last season. Are you concerned about their ability to handle it this week? They were able to shut down the running game of the Jaguars and Bengals with relative success the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I feel good. The only defensive player that we might not have, which I think that it was just rest day, is Joe Hayden. Joe Hayden might be off for the entire week just because he had his injury and they want him to be fully rested. He did not practice He didn't practice at all this week yet, but today is what is today? Tuesday? Yeah, today's Tuesday. So he's got one more day to practice. I won't be surprised if he doesn't practice all week and then still plays, just because he had that injury and he's a veteran. So he's the one, but that doesn't even scare me. I like our chances now that we have Mike Hilton and Tyson Alualu back. Big reason that they were able to run on us last time was because we didn't have Tyson Alualu and Mike Hilton playing. And they're really good run stoppers. They were a big part of the reason why the Steelers were so good against the run. And we saw Tyson Alualu's abilities, not even just against the run, just last week against the Jaguars. He is he's been a force in the middle of the defense. And it's going to be much different this time. And so to me, it just feels like the Ravens offense is in a much worse spot between, the injuries they have, between the COVID reserve players that they have, and now the Steelers are at higher strength. I don't know if Joe Hayden didn't go, I don't know who would start in his place.
I'm thinking based on what we saw in the game against Jacksonville, depending on the personnel on the field, it's either going to be Cameron Sutton or Justin Lane.
Yeah, that's what I was between two. I just don't know who. Lane came in first, and Sutton came in after Hayden came back and then came back out. So, they might just switch it up. To me, Lane is practicing to be an outside corner, while Sutton is just been a slot corner for the Steelers. So I don't know how you look at that. I feel like Cameron Sutton's a better corner. I don't know how you go about it, though, because, again, Sutton's been his entire time with the Steelers. Didn't actually Sutton used to come in for Artie Burns. He used to play outside corner.
Yeah, so
Now he's just been predominantly slot.
So Sutton,
it's tough to call.
Sutton is just so versatile and smart. I think the Steelers just didn't feel like moving him to the outside because they didn't want to move two players out of position at that time. But I think it would be Sutton. But, Lane didn't disappoint in limited action last week. I think it's possible, or likely really, that we see both of them at points.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that they'll mix up the defenses that we see. We'll see some base, we'll see some not base. And that'll bring in both those guys. I wouldn't be surprised to see both those guys at some point together. I could see it.
Defensive strategy should be, I think, to come after him, blitz him heavy, just like you have all year.
Blitz against the run, blitz heavy. It doesn't matter. Give up the big plays. Well, try not to, obviously, but let's just give the heavy blitz. I really think that under pressure, he's going to really struggle to throw.
If there are concerns about the Steelers' ability to defend the deep ball, the way the things have been going, if the Ravens' receivers' issues are as bad as they've been talking about, just focus on defending Mark Andrews and force Jackson to try to take deep shots with Marquise Brown and Miles Boykin and possibly even Devin Duvernay. Willie Snead underneath could be an issue too. He had a big game a few weeks ago, but he doesn't scare me all that much. And like I said, if what the Ravens and their fans have been saying about their receiver play lately, I don't think you need to be worried. It sounds like Marquise Brown is having a big drop problem, and no one else is really emerging in this passing game. You know my thoughts on Devin Duvernay. He's a decent athlete, but I don't think he's going to ever be that polished as a receiver.
Yeah, we'll see. The one thing is that Dez is getting an increased role. We saw him. I think he got 4 catches against the Titans.
I was surprised to see that.
Squad. Yeah, they're trying to. They're expanding his role. He got to play. Don't quote me on this. I saw a tweet after the game, so I might be misquoting. I'm pretty sure he played 40% of the snaps. So he's getting an expanded role, I guess, over probably Miles Boykin. So he is someone to watch out for that they might start trusting a little bit more against the Steelers. He's been getting a little bit more of a role every week. So, that might be the only wide receiver that, other than Marquise Brown, that I'm worried about. Because, if Dez somehow returns to the Dez he was, or even just half the Dez he was when he was with the Cowboys, that could be dangerous.
Elsewhere, let's see. I feel pretty good about the Steelers' opportunities to attack Lamar Jackson as a passer and cover on defense. I just think with the ground game, you have to I don't know where. I guess it starts with scheme. You've had plenty of looks at it now. I think the Steelers should be much better now in terms of run defense. I'm expecting a lot more out of him this time. They're down Nick Boyle, they're down Mark Ingram, they're down J.K. Dobbins, they're down, Ronnie Stanley. This is a group that's missing a lot, and they've been struggling. So I think it would be very disappointing if the Steelers don't put together a good game for the run defense.
Yeah, everything was stacked in their favor. This would be a really disappointing time to give up something like that. With everything is stacked against the Ravens. It's how it is, and the Steelers have almost everything going for them in this game.
Let's look at the other side of the ball now. The Ravens likely without the likes of Brandon Williams and Calais Campbell in this game. Their two top interior defensive linemen. So it's possible we could be seeing a lot of Justin Matabuke, a guy that you looked at prior to the draft this year. Go ahead.
I'm likely to see a guy that I really loved and a guy I really hated. Because with no Pernell McPhee, we're likely to see Jalen Ferguson from Louisiana State. Or not Louisiana State. Louisiana Tech. LSU is Louisiana State. I'm sorry. Louisiana Tech, who I hated because I thought he was slow and just overweight. And then Matabuke, who's really good. I just looked at him this year. Ferguson was 2 years ago, or 3.
Trying to see the injuries here. I thought I saw something about Derek Wolfe, one of the defensive linemen. Did you see anything
He
about
has
him?
an illness, which is scary. He might be held out too because of the illness.
So
Not COVID, apparently, or at least we don't think.
So you could be talking about those three guys down. You're talking about Matabuke, Ferguson, and then what was going on with Ngakwe? Was something going on with him?
Nah, he's cool. He's good, as far as I know.
He's obviously new there. And then the linebackers, they've got Patrick Queen, who's been decent for them, and then they have the other linebacker spot. They're splitting time with L.J. Fort and our old buddy Malik Harrison, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals. So, and then, of course, there's Matthew Judon, who's been a solid rusher. So, I know this defense could be missing a lot of pieces, but it's been a pretty good unit this year. And their best part, the best part of their defense is their back end with Marcus Peters, Jimmy Smith, Marlon Humphrey, and Chuck Clark, along with Anthony Levine. This is a really talented group here on the back end. And given the way the Steelers typically play, you might think that it actually might not be a good thing for the Steelers to spread it out and get all those receivers on the field. But it also did work earlier this year, too.
Seems to be the only thing that works with the Steelers consistently in every game they go into. Spreading it out just seems like the best way to go because of how fast they get the ball out. You figure that one cornerback isn't going to be fast enough, one of the three, usually, or one of the four. So I think that is still the move. I still think that even at the one thing, the caveat is if Juju Smith-Schuster doesn't play, which he was limited today, and there's possibly doesn't play. I think he is. They said that it was kind of questionable because you saw him limping around the field at the end, but they said if this was a dire game that they would put him back in. So I don't know if I take that with a grain of salt or not, but if he plays, you can't stop every single wide receiver that the Steelers have. It's just not possible. If you're double covering Juju, if you have a guy on Deontay Johnson that you're happy with, just Chase Claypool's going to be open. It's just how it works. There's not a team in this league that has three cornerbacks that I feel comfortable with stopping the Steelers through wide receivers.
So you wouldn't give any consideration to possibly trying to run on these guys a little more because Williams, Campbell, possibly Wolf, and McPhee could all be out?
I mean, I'm not opposed to it, of course. I feel like the Steelers are going to try and find a balance. They're obviously not going to just come out throwing unless they're trying to do something really confusing. I have a feeling it still won't work, even though that their line is decimated. I mean, on the left side, it's going to be Matty Bouquet, which, if he's as good as I thought, isn't a good thing. But Matty Bouquet with Justin Ellis in the middle. And then Judon's been banged up, too. He's got an ankle injury. He was limited today. So it's just, I feel like the run should work, but I don't think it will because it's worked.
I think I might have forgotten to mention Marcus Peters, too. I don't know. This is interesting. I really would have felt differently, prior to this week, because the Steelers' offense, it performed well enough in that Ravens game in the second half, but they didn't finish with a ton of yardage, and they were struggling in the early part of that game. The way I see it is that, I don't know, part of me wants to see the Steelers, because I know the Ravens do a lot of these kind of ghost blitzes where they're bringing it from all these different places, but I don't know. This feels like a game where the Steelers should have an advantage anywhere. Excuse me. But especially if the Ravens aren't blitzing, they should have plenty of opportunities to sit back there and throw the football. They should be able to run the football better. And if they are blitzing, I know the Ravens' best players are in their secondary. I just think the way the Steelers, like you said, the way they can spread the ball around, I think you put it pretty well. I think that Ben's going to continue to find the right guy to throw to.
Yeah, I think blitzing against us is just a mistake. I feel like with how fast Ben gets out the ball and how fast he finds his receivers, the short routes they run, blitzing is just a mistake. It's going to make it easier to find the one guy that gets open immediately on the short route, like the mesh routes and stuff. could see another heavy. I know it didn't happen last game. Last time it was completely the opposite, but we could see another Deontay Johnson heavy game like last week. His first game against the Ravens wasn't good, or in terms of he had one catch, but it didn't happen until the fourth quarter. I feel like this could be his week instead.
So what are three things you want to see the Steelers happen for the Steelers in this game? Something they can do, or something that they are aiming to do, something like that.
Well, first and foremost, I would like to see the Steelers establish a run, even though I'm not banking on it. It'd be really nice to just have a game, the offense firing on all cylinders against a team that you really should be, because it's stacked up. Not to beat on a dead horse, but it's really stacked up against the Ravens. They're on a short week after playing a long game. They're banged up. They're missing a bunch of players. They're starting a rookie on the defensive line, and they're starting Justin Ellis in the middle instead of Brandon Williams. Missing Calais Campbell. No Pernell McPhee, who's been really solid for them. Matthew Judon's broken up. They should be able to run. I would like to see them establish a run in some way. To be more specific, I'd like to see them run to the left a lot. Try and attack the new guys in, which is Justin Madubuike and Justin Ellis. And if that doesn't work, the next thing I'd like to see the Steelers do in this game is just keep throwing the ball quick. Get the ball. It's nothing new. It's not like I'm telling them something that's revolutionary for them. I think that throwing the ball away quick, getting it to your receiver and letting them get the yards after the catch like the Steelers have been doing all year should work against this team. I don't see why it wouldn't. And then just to say one thing that's on the other side of the ball, we kind of already said it, but it's just going to be blitzing Lamar Jackson. Let him beat you every once in a while with a big explosive play, but I guarantee you it's going to result in almost just as many turnovers as it does explosive plays given up. I'll almost put money down on it. I think that the Steelers would be just as good in that department.
So, I think we pretty much covered it. Do you have any other thoughts about this game in general right now?
No, I really don't. I think I covered it really well.
I think
it's going to be a tough game for the Ravens. They're going to have to. The one thing that they got going for them is their backs against the wall. That you never want to put an animal with its back against the wall, and that's like the one thing I could say they have going for them in this game.
I forgot where I wanted to go with this one. Man, I wish I could remember, but let's get to some news and notes real quick for the meantime. The Steelers placed tight end Zach Gentry on injured reserve and elevated tight end Kevin Rader to the active roster. They also activated Vance McDonald from the COVID reserve and signed linebacker / long snapper Christian Kuntz to the practice squad. So keep an eye on that. They have a 54th man roster exemption at this point in time due to the fact that McDonald came off COVID reserve. That will probably go away by game time, I would imagine.
Yeah, expect them to cut someone like Trey Edmonds or Jalen Samuels or something like that, or put one of them on IR instead to clear up room for him.
The Steelers' protected practice squad players this week are wide receiver Deion Kane, running back Wendell Smallwood, safety Antoine Brooks Jr., and punter Corliss Waitman. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I just love the weekly Wendell Smallwood protection. Makes me smile.
Do you think there's any chance that the Steelers actually dress Kevin Rader for this game?
I think they do. I think that after seeing Gentry go down, imagine that with Vance McDonald's injury history, I don't want to play that game. I really don't. Not that Ebron's bad. It's just that if Vance McDonald goes down, Ebron's not a good blocking tight end at all. And I know Vance McDonald has had his struggle, but he's still a better blocking tight end than Ebron is. I don't really know how good of a blocker Kevin Rader is, but I feel like he could be a better one than Ebron. So just in case something happens to either Ebron or McDonald, I think you should dress the third tight end with Rader.
Oh, I remembered what I wanted to talk about, Austin. It's about
What's that?
when you're not a power running team like, teams like the Titans or Ravens are, I think it's important to take into context what a good running game or a good enough running game is. So obviously we're big on, run success rate, and, a one big run yards per carry doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. I think that several big things with a running game, because it can be at least supplemented by a short passing game to some extent, I think there are three key factors into something that will make a running game, at the bare minimum, efficient enough to keep using. And I don't know what order you want to rank them, but I'll tell you them first. And I mean, we could talk about what's the most important, but I think in a running game, you need to minimize negative plays. So this is plays where you're stopped at the line of scrimmage, or you lose yardage on the play. If you can keep those runs to a minimum, you're really doing yourself a favor. Number two, you're getting explosive runs, so runs of 20-plus yards. I think anytime you get that, those are freebies, and we know how big explosive plays are. Them and turnovers are the biggest plays in the sport that aren't touchdowns, after all. And then last but not least, it's how efficient you are in short yardage, because even if it's a third and inches and you get a 1 yard run that converts the first down, that's still a successful run because you've gotten a new set of chains. So I think it's important to keep that in context too. And a 1 yard run on the 1 yard line is a touchdown. That's still a successful run, even if it is just 1 yard. So I was curious if you agreed with me in that sense, because usually if you can do all those things, the rest of the numbers will generally take care of themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like the short yardage situation and the negative plays kind of go hand in hand. So I view those as equals. I don't find the explosive plays as important. I think back to the Steelers' Le'Veon Bell days, and Mans almost had no explosive plays, at least not in the running game, and he was still a very serviceable running back, and did it really well. I think that I'm not going to say that it's unimportant. I just think that the other two are way more important, minimizing the negative plays and being successful on short yardage situations.
I think the short yardage is probably, in my opinion, the most important, because that's when you need to have your versatility more than any other time, is being able to run in short yardage and convert.
That makes sense to me.
But I just wanted to bring that up to you because I think there are kind of parameters to look for when it comes to a ground game, especially one that's not the biggest part of the offense. It's a minority part of the offense.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So last couple things to mention. First one to mention that the Steelers can clinch the playoffs this weekend. We mentioned it in the last podcast. Here's what needs to happen. They need to win against the Ravens. They need a loss from the Las Vegas Raiders against the Atlanta Falcons or a tie. And they need the Miami Dolphins to lose or tie at the New York Jets. Now, there's a caveat. The Steelers will not clinch if both teams tie. So if you want to place bets on a tie happening in both games, be my guest. You'll probably be very rich if it does happen. But you're going to need three things to happen, most likely. All right. Go ahead.
Just wanted to add that if the Steelers win, it eliminates Baltimore from winning the division at all. They could obviously still make the playoffs, but a win against Baltimore means that the Steelers cannot lose the division to Baltimore. They could still lose it to Cleveland, though.
That's correct. But if Pittsburgh wins, they'll be in position to knock Cleveland out of the race for it this week, assuming Cleveland doesn't lose this weekend, which they could as well. So the Steelers could have the AFC North wrapped up in pretty short order here. All things being considered, I think that they don't necessarily have their eyes set on that right now. They need to try to keep pace or stay ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs, who are trying to keep pace with the Steelers.
Yeah, they're 0-0 in my eyes. 0-0. On to the next game.
And last but not least, the Pro Football Hall of Fame announced its class of 2021 semifinalists, and they include former Steelers guard Alan Faneca and former Steelers wide receiver Hines Ward. We've seen these names a lot over the last few years. I I think we don't really necessarily need to rehash anything unless if there was something you wanted to add about either of them.
No, hopefully it's Fanica's year, though.
Indeed, absolutely. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the discussion points with Ben Roethlisberger about him potentially being in the running for Comeback Player of the Year and the MVP award. Just your quick thoughts on it. How legit do you think are his chances at either?
I think MVP is really low. I like how he's playing, but I don't think he's playing at an MVP level. I think that he could, if he keeps his interceptions as low as they are and keeps playing at this level, I think he could be at the back end. I think I said on the last podcast he could surpass Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson's kind of not struggled, been throwing a lot of picks as of late. I don't think he'll be able to surpass Aaron Rodgers or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, though. I think that's a tough one. I mean, maybe. You know what? I'll say Josh Allen's a possibility because it makes it so much easier if you beat them head-to-head. If you beat them head-to-head and have better stats, it usually usurps the person that lost if you're able to do that. So maybe Josh Allen as well. As for Comeback Player of the Year, I think unfortunately it's over. And this was a very unfortunate year to be in the running for it. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I think it's in Alex Smith's hands. It doesn't matter. He won a game, and a lot of people are already saying like that's enough. To me, Comeback Player of the Year is an award that you have to come back from adversity and play well. A lot of people are factoring in the adversity much more here because obviously he almost died. It's crazy that he's back on a football field. It's just like, I don't know. I value the coming back and playing at a higher level rather than adversity it took to come back. It's up to interpretation. I guess it's up to whoever votes on it, whether they want to look at how they came back more or. Because I don't know. It's however you look at it. A lot of people seem to think that Alex Smith hasn't locked up, and I tend to agree. And to me, I think that Ben probably should win it. But,
Do you think it will matter when they play in 2 weeks and say the Steelers win by, 30 or something like that?
Nope. Based on how people have already talked about it, he took 2 snaps against, I forget what team.
The Rams.
Whatever time that Kyle Allen got a concussion.
It was the Rams. It was the Rams because I remember freaking out because it was Aaron Donald that he was looking at.
Yeah. He played not that many snaps. It was an exaggeration. And they were immediately after that game and said, he's come back player here. They lost that game, obviously. But they finally won their first game, and people are like, hats off. To me, it's already over. Alex Smith could throw like 20 interceptions on the year, and they're going to say, the people are going to say comeback player of the year. I don't know how the people are. It's going to be up to the people that vote. And the Twitter is the majority that. They are obviously not the voters. The voters are a minority. I don't know how the voters are going to vote. It depends on how they look at it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it, why did he stepping onto the field necessarily mean that he should have won it then? If he needed to do that, shouldn't he have just won it for the fact that he was suiting up?
I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you. I tried looking it up because I was curious. I was like, what is the definition of the Comeback Player of the Year award? What does it go to? There is no true definition. There's only a Wikipedia definition that someone made where they said it tends to be a player that did such and such. They don't actually have like qualifications. They might actually have it like again with the people that vote. They might have a say like it's not, you can't count adversity. You have to count what they did when they come back. It's up in the air for me. I do think Alex Smith has it because basically, I don't know if the echo chamber of Twitter is good to listen to, but that's basically what Twitter says.
It's definitely not, though.
No, it really isn't. But at the moment,
but they might be
also,
right
because it's not just Twitter. Like ESPN analysts and stuff, like Matthew Berry said, they're like it's got to be Alex. Like there's no one even else close, and like the fact that they say no one else is close, like. That makes me think that Ben Roethlisberger isn't being considered because how Alex Smith overcame something so adverse.
The only way I think Ben could win the MVP is if he keeps his interceptions to a single-digit number, throws for at least 35-plus touchdowns, probably closer to 40, has 4,000-plus passing yards, and the Steelers are 16-0.
Yeah, I don't. Even if the Steelers go 16-0, I think it's Patrick Mahomes to lose. Because the reason the Raiders, the Chiefs have a loss is not because of Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he threw a pick six in that game. I still think it was mostly the defense, but because that's the only pick he's thrown all year.
Well, he's thrown
Literally
two.
His only pick was sixth.
He had a second pick on Sunday.
I forgot. Okay, I forgot because I didn't watch that game. But yeah, okay. So he only has two picks though. It's really Patrick Mahomes to lose. I don't think Ben Roethlisberger is going to ever usurp him.
It's going to take bad games. It's going to take bad games for Mahomes. And something else to keep in mind, I know Russell Wilson has played badly lately, but their next 5 games are the entire NFC East and the New York Jets.
Hey, time to stat pad, bro. That is time.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, he could end up with 50 before the season finale, the way those teams are playing.
I didn't realize that. I wouldn't have said, because I wouldn't have said Ben Roethlisberger could usurp him, because that doesn't sound like a schedule where Ben could usurp him when Ben's schedule's probably harder going against the Ravens and the Bills.
It's any given Sunday, so we'll see.
Any given Sunday.
But it's going to require him doing what he's done and probably a little more, and it's also going to require some people to falter. But, it is just an MVP award. But I thought we should have that type of discussion.
No, I agree. I think that was a good discussion to have.
Shall we move into the rest of week 12 already? Wow. Thanksgiving week.
Yeah, it's flying.
So, obviously, now we're at the Thanksgiving games. We have... Oh, excuse me. We have the 1 o'clock game, which is always the Detroit Lions. They're hosting the Houston Texans in this one. A game between two teams that are underachieving, but, it kind of feels like they're both heading in the opposite direction. Deshaun Watson played his best game of the season against the Patriots last week, but the Texans still aren't necessarily going anywhere. The Lions, on the other hand, are in a complete free fall. They got shut out by a team that gave up 46 points the previous week, and they gave up 20 points to a former XFL quarterback. So things are not good in Detroit right now. The fact that they're only 3-point underdogs at home is kind of surprising to me. That just tells me how bad they think the Texans' defense is, and that is concerning, but I still like the Texans in this one.
I know how bad it was last week, but I'm going to genuinely think about betting on this game again. I'm going to pick the Texans to cover. I don't have many good things to say about the Lions.
Nor does anyone right now. We were talking.
Kenny Galladay is still not playing or practicing. I don't know if he's playing for this game.
Matthew Stafford is a much different player when he's in the lineup, and he just hasn't been at all this year, save for a few games.
Yeah, it's tough.
Second game, we have an NFC East clash between the Washington football team and the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas is getting 3 points at home here. Every week I've heard after an NFC East team suffers a crushing loss, they're actually still in the thick of things here. I've heard they're still in the thick of things here when referring to an NFC East team that's not the Eagles, because the Eagles have been in first place for most of the time. And it's like all of the 3 other teams, Washington, the Giants, and the Cowboys, have all been within striking distance, and they've all been done. It's back and forth. It's like they're done when it's like, not really. They're only a half game back. All 4 of these teams still have a chance to win this division, and they are all deeply flawed and have their own issues. But right now it feels like Dallas is one of those 2 teams that it's like maybe they could win it.
I can't wait for the Saints or the Packers to clap up whatever team comes out of the NFC East. It'd be so fun to watch. I didn't know where to go with this game, and it went back and forth. I feel like the football team is the only team in that division that has an offensive line, so that's kind of what I went with. So I'm picking the football team +3. It's a question mark because I'm not really comfortable with it. What did you pick for this game?
I picked Dallas to cover. Save for Carson Wentz, I think Washington's quarterback situation is the worst in that division, even with the Dallas Cowboys being what it is. They're just a bad Ben DiNucci start away from possibly another win, because Garrett Gilbert, I thought, played really well, and Dalton looked pretty comfortable last week. I think the Cowboys at home will be in pretty good shape in this one, so I like them to win. Let's move to Sunday now. The Las Vegas Raiders are at the Atlanta Falcons. Vegas is getting 3 points on the road. Are we going to get a bounce-back game from Matty Ice and the Falcons? I say no. I think the Raiders' offense is still just too much for the Falcons' defense to hang on for. And on the other side, the Falcons' offense, Julio Jones went out with an injury. They've got problems, and they're just trying to reset right now. The Raiders need these games.
Yeah, I think that the Raiders cover here. I think that the Falcons out of Julio Jones is going to be tough. They really struggled against the Saints last week, which was kind of disappointing. But I think that the Raiders' defense is a little bit easier. But without Julio Jones the entire game, I don't think that they're going to be able to stay within 3. I could see them losing by 4. But that's even kind of tough for me. I'll pick the Raiders to cover.
Chargers at Bills. Buffalo coming off the bye weeks, getting 5.5 at home. I like Buffalo. I know the Chargers got a nice win against the Jets last week, but Buffalo off the bye. The weather's getting cold up here in Buffalo, in Western New York area. I think that Buffalo is going to start to play some good football. Their defense has started to come around in recent weeks. I think the Bills are primed for a possible playoff run here, so I like them to win over the young and inexperienced Chargers.
Justin Herbert don't care about no cold. Where did he come from? Oregon State, right? Or Oregon? He came from one of those. Yeah, he came from, I knew he came from one. I couldn't remember which. I'm going to pick the Chargers plus 5.5. Chargers only lose close games. There's no such thing as winning close games or losing by a lot. They only lose close games. So I'm going to pick the Chargers plus 5.5. And also, I don't trust the Bills' defense at all.
Unblowoutable are the Chargers, possibly.
Yes, they are.
A team that was previously thought to be unblowoutable, the Cincinnati Bengals, are very much blowoutable now. And they play host to the New York Giants. And does it say much about the NFC East that a team with Ryan Finley and basically nothing else on the Bengals team is only a 5.5-point home underdog to a NFC East team? I still like the Giants. I saw enough from Ryan Finley last year to know that. I mean, this is now the 2019 Bengals all over again. They just happen to have T. Higgins this time.
And no Joe Mixon to counter it. So for me, I kind of went back and forth. I was like, how bad do I think the Giants actually are? Because this is a really bad Bengals team. This is like the 2019 team. And they don't really have much. I mean, they have AJ Green now, but AJ Green, that means nothing. Those words mean nothing in 2020.
He seems completely like a complete shell of himself. I don't know if he needs a change of scenery, or if he needs to change the way he plays, or if he's just done. He might just be
too
done.
old.
Yeah.
The injury might have gotten him. Regardless.
I was just going to say, I think that there's still...
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was just saying, I think there's still a possibility for him to transition to kind of what Larry Fitzgerald did in the latter stages of his career, where he just kind of became a slot receiver. But I don't know if he's, A, willing to do that, and B, I don't know if he can do it quite successfully as someone like Fitzgerald did. So this could be the end of the line for a really good football player.
Yeah, which is sad. AJ Green was my favorite Bengal for the longest time. Always a really good guy and always a really good player. So I hope his career isn't done, honestly. I hope he goes to an NFC team and I never have to see him again and he balls out. But, at the moment it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But still, I'm going to pick the Bengals plus 5.5. I think that the Giants are that bad of a team. I don't think that the Giants can win this by 5.5 points. I think that the Bengals could even possibly win it. I think there's a chance for that.
Rematch of an AFC South matchup between the Titans and Colts that the Colts won just a few weeks ago on Thursday night. Indy's getting 3.5 at home this week. I actually like the Titans in this one. I think this is a very important game for the Titans to win. The Colts, coming off a big comeback win over the Packers, I think will be caught sleeping just a little bit here.
The Colts have been getting me every week. Every week I feel like I picked the Colts game wrong. It's always... I know for a fact I got the Packers one wrong. I know I got the first Titans game wrong because I thought the Titans were better. They always, every week, get me. On the first game, the first game they got me because they lost to the Jaguars. I always pick the Colts game wrong. I'm picking the Colts to cover, which probably means that the Titans are going to either win or just stay within 3. I want to get a Colts game right, man. The Colts cover.
Panthers at Vikings, 2 NFC teams more or less out of it. Minnesota's -4, though. I like them in this one. With all their issues still withstanding, I think Dalvin Cook is just... is Christian McCaffrey going to be back? Do we know that?
We have no idea. We were told that Christian McCaffrey is going to practice in some capacity tomorrow, but his availability for Sunday is still in question. He's going to get a limited participation on Wednesday. Is what that likely means, unless he comes in and surprises us with a full participation. But all we were told was he's going to participate in some capacity, and this week isn't in question, so probably not.
I'll take the Vikings and Dalvin Cook then to lay the 4 points.
I have a feeling about this one. I'm just going to pick the Panthers +4. I know that the Vikings just took a bad loss to the Cowboys. It's likely not going to be sustained, but I still like the Panthers team, even though they're bad. I'm going to pick the Panthers +4.
Cardinals at Patriots. Arizona's getting 2.5 on the road here. I'm actually going to go with New England here. I think that the weather up here getting pretty bad. I'm curious to see how Kyler Murray and the Cardinals handle it. I think the Patriots are going to be, they haven't been winning a ton of games, but they're rounding into form. They're not looking lost like they did just after the COVID struck their team. So I think they're playing better, and I think that they'll catch the Cardinals by surprise here. The Cardinals are still a good team, but like I said, I think they still have some growing pains to go through until they get to the summit. And, teams like the Seahawks and Rams are still ahead of them in my mind. So give me the Patriots plus the 2.5.
I'm going to pick the Cardinals to cover. I'm just not sold on the Patriots.
Dolphins at Jets. The Jets are 1 touchdown underdogs to the Dolphins at home. I actually like the Jets +7 here. I'm not saying the Jets are going to win here, but I've noticed the last few weeks the Jets are a lot more competitive than they had been all season. And I'm noticing, I think that the correlation with that is that, number one, they are getting more aggressive quarterback play from their quarterback, that being Joe Flacco. And number two, the Jets' receivers and weapons are finally starting to get healthy. They have Jamison Crowder back, Denzel Mims, Brashard Perryman. There's at least some guys here that provide at least a spark. And with the guy throwing downfield like Flacco, he has to avoid the horrible turnovers that he had over the last few weeks, like that pick six in LA last week. But the way the Jets are playing, they're playing their best football right now. And it might not be enough to win a game, which is, still awful. But I think that they'll catch the Dolphins sleeping a bit here. I'm not sure what's going on with the Dolphins offense. I'm a little confused by what's going on there.
I don't know if they know what's going on, honestly. I'm sorry if you hear that music. I was just trying to look at the stats for Denzel Mims because I was really interested to see how he did last week because I didn't see. 3 for 71, by the way. I love that, man. I don't really know what's going on with the Dolphins. They look like they lost their identity. And granted, they're a little bit beat up. I really wish I knew Myles Gaskin was coming back for this game. I know that the whole on the Salvin Ahmed train, but Myles Gaskin was awesome before he went on IR, and he should be back for this game. They said it was a minor injury. This is his 3rd game since being on IR. So, I'm sorry, this is his 4th game after being on IR for 3 games. So, I feel like he should be back, but I don't know. Ever since losing him and Preston Williams, they look bad. I'm going to still pick the Dolphins to cover because I'm never picking the Jets in a game again this year, as I've made that promise, basically.
The Cleveland Browns are at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cleveland's got a whole touchdown favorite on the road. I like them to cover. This could be the first non-bad weather game the Browns have played in what feels like a month and a half. Their defense is playing much better, probably because of that. So I think this game is going to help people continue to think that they've turned a corner, and they probably have to an extent. I still have questions about them overall, but you don't get to 7-3 by accident. Even if they don't finish the season strong, this Cleveland team is a lot closer to what they should have been last year.
Yeah, the one saving grace for the Jaguars is that they're not going to see Myles Garrett. That'd be awful for them with how their offensive line has been playing. But I still can't see a way they win. The Browns are going to cover this, I think, pretty easy. I mean, the other saving grace of the Jaguars is no Denzel Ward. But the Browns' defense has actually still been solid. They're down Ward. They're down a backup defensive end. I even forget his name. He went on the COVID-19 list. And they're down Myles Garrett. So, I mean, there's a chance that the Jaguars get the upset, but I'm not picking that here. Browns cover.
Into the 4 o'clock slate, the New Orleans Saints at the Denver Broncos. Denver's getting 6 points as an underdog at home. You know, the Taysom Hill experiment went okay enough in its first go-round. Playing in Denver is always such a different animal. I like the Saints, but not as much as you might think.
I will also pick the Saints. The Broncos' defense is actually pretty solid. They played really well against Miami last week, but I think that was a lot more of Miami having offensive confusion, so I'm going to pick the Saints to cover. And then the Taysom Hill experiment did go well in the first time. Maybe it won't go so well in the second week, but I'm going to still pick the Saints.
An NFC West battle, the San Francisco 49ers at the Los Angeles Rams. Rams getting 7. The Niners are a scrappy team, but I think the Rams might be the best team in that division. And with the Seahawks cupcake schedule ahead, like Austin and I just talked about, the Rams are going to need to win, and I think they'll pull out a 10-point victory here. So give me the Rams, cover the 7.
NFC West is always so weird. I'm going to pick the 49ers plus 7 with that in mind.
Probably, maybe the game of the week. The Chiefs at the Buccaneers. Kansas City is getting 3.5 on the road. The Buccaneers will not be in primetime this time. They've struggled in primetime so far this year. They've looked out of sync, and the Chiefs still look very good. Any chance the Buccaneers go in and win? I think there's a chance they keep it within 3, but I still like the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Chiefs to cover here. I don't like... The one bad thing is that the Chiefs' defense has been regressing. They've been getting worse and for seemingly no reason. Like, they've been getting healthier and stuff, so that is my concern. Brady hasn't been playing well on the other side either, and he has tons of weapons. I don't know. It's a toss-up. I could see this being a shootout and then the Buccaneers keeping it within 3.5, but I'm going to still pick the Chiefs to cover. I'm going to say that their defense does well enough to keep it up, make the game out, keep the score more comfortable than 3.5.
Sunday Night Football, the free-falling Bears at the Green Bay Packers. There's no line right now. I'll take the Packers if it's -12. How about that?
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Packers regardless of the spread. I don't really know why there's no spread. I'm guessing there's something happening with coronavirus. I haven't actually seen any news on that.
I don't think the Bears have named a starter yet.
They're waiting for the quarterback because Foles and Trubisky are injured. Makes sense. Just give me the Packers to cover regardless the spread. Whatever the spread is for the day, take it.
Monday Night Football, the Seattle Seahawks at the Philadelphia Eagles. Seattle's getting 6 points on the road. Give me the Seahawks. I know that they haven't been able to win many games by a lot this year, but the Eagles are in horrible shape right now. And Carson Wentz if he's not going to get sat down, he's going to keep hurting this team. And the Seahawks are finally getting some good play from their defensive front. Carlos Dunlap has been great for them. Shows he really did still have some gas left in the tank after all.
Yeah, it's one of the worst pass rushes that's been improving against one of the worst pass blocking teams that's given up the most sacks. I like the Seahawks' chances in this game, and I'm going to pick the Seahawks to cover by the 6 points.
All right, let's move on to X Factors and bold predictions. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So my X Factor on offense is going to be... I want to pick James Conner. James Conner... quickly, I'm sorry, just because I thought about it. We didn't talk about it. The Steelers are wearing their color rush for this game.
Oh, yeah.
Color rush.
Yes, indeed.
I don't know why. Okay, I do know why. I have a color rush James Conner jersey that I'm now likely to wear because I'm picking him as my X Factor. That's what made me think of that. So I'm going to go with James Conner because I think establishing the run in this game would be important. I think he has a chance to have a really good game with all the injuries and how tired this defense should be coming on a short week after a long game. So I'll pick him on offense. On defense, that's a bit tougher. There's bunch of guys I'd want to pick on defense. For me, I will pick Cameron Hayward. I think that Cameron Hayward should be working that side of the line. I think that he is due for a bigger game, like where he's padding his stats. I feel like we haven't gotten that game this year. Not that he's been bad. He's been very, very good. Just that he hasn't been able to stat pad this year. I think that he has a really solid game in this game. So what are your X factors?
I'm going to go with Deontay Johnson for the Steelers offense. When he's been healthy and he's finished a game, he's been getting targeted like Antonio Brown was back in the day. He had 16 targets last week. This is a guy that's been a nice rhythm receiver for Ben Roethlisberger. And when he's feeling comfortable and at his best, he's going to number 18. So I like Deontay Johnson in this one. And on defense, I'm going to go with the big winner from last week, and that's Terrell Edmunds. I think Edmunds could be tasked with spying Lamar Jackson in this game. His usefulness as a run defender is going to be quite important in this game. And I think if he could possibly build off of the 2 turnovers he forced last week, we could finally see more of what we saw a glimpse of last week, which is why the Steelers took him in the first round. So I like Edmonds to be my defensive X factor and Deontay Johnson to be my offensive X factor. Moving on to bold predictions, Austin.
So first is James Conner's going to have 180 scrimmage yards. Second is that Cameron Hayward is going to get 2 sacks and a forced fumble. And that my third one is going to be that the Steelers force 4 turnovers again in this game after the Jaguars game. And all 4 of the recoveries or interceptions are by cornerbacks.
I'm going to give a bold prediction for Deontay Johnson. I think he's going to finish with 10 catches, 150 yards, and 3 touchdowns. His first career 3-touchdown game for the second-year player Deontay Johnson. Number 2, I'll go with Terrell Edmunds I'll give him 2 sacks and 10 tackles. I think two interceptions is a little wild to expect from him again after he had only 1 through his first 2.5 years as a pro. So I like that. I'll go 2.5 sacks and 1 forced fumble. And then last, let's see, 4 turnovers. Steelers crack 500 yards of offense and yield less than 300. How about that? So I think we're both on the way to predicting what looks like it could be a pretty big win for the Steelers here on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. It's just the Ravens have nothing going for them. Like I said, the only good thing I could say about them is that Gus Edwards has run all over the Steelers before, several times, not just once. And then they are backed up against the wall. That's really it. They're playing with a more injured team. They're playing on a short week with a long game. The Steelers are playing on a short week with a short game where they got to rest their starters. The Steelers almost have no one injured going into this game. Joe Hayden and Smith-Schuster are big ones, but I think that Juju's going to suit up, and even if Joe Hayden can't go, I feel comfortable. We have Tyson Alualu and Mike Hilton for this game, meaning that the run defense should be better, especially with no J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram to play in this game. It just, to me, it's not very often in this matchup, even when when one team is really bad. But to me, this is leading to a Steelers blowout. I think it's 28-13 Steelers. There's no line for this game, I should mention, because obviously we're waiting on all the Corona stuff, but I think that it's like 28-6 or 28-6 for most of this game, and then the Ravens get a touchdown at the end. I originally had my point spread at 28-6. I switched. I was like, they'll get a little garbage time touchdown to make it look not as bad. So I guess I'm picking the Steelers by our standards to cover by 15, Vegas standards cover by 14. What is your score prediction?
I like the Steelers to win this one 31-17. You covered basically all the reasons why I would say so as well. That the Steelers offense, even though the Ravens have their talented cornerback group, the Ravens are going to be missing too many parts on defense to be able to hold up against the Steelers. And offensively, I just have a hard time thinking the Ravens are going to be able to move the ball consistently. They're struggling on offense right now, and I think that against this Steelers defense, they're going to struggle to do so. I think they'll keep it close early, but the Steelers will pull away late and will win 31-17. Any closing thoughts?
No.
Alrighty. Well, in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. You know the deal. You can find our episodes on SoundCloud, YouTube, and our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. You can also email us through that website as well. In the meantime, thank you for listening, and we hope everyone has a safe and hopefully memorable, for good reasons, Thanksgiving, and not hopefully memorable for all the bad reasons. Obviously, this is a difficult time for everybody, but just remember we're, just going day by day, and, we obviously all hope that everyone is safe and enjoys not just Thanksgiving, but of course enjoys the football as well. And Austin, thanks for joining me here early, and we'll sit back and enjoy our stuffing and turkey, and then we'll enjoy, hopefully, a Steelers 11-0 start.
That'd be fantastic.
Until next time, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.